So, Rob, you're in Zurich, headquarters of FIFA, and close to a hotel which was for many years the favoured destination for FIFA executive committee members.
Yes, the Doldergrand, currently England's Women's Euros base. I was able to have a bit of a look round. Surprised to see Sepp Blatter's still on the wall. They've got the pennant there from 2008. I don't know if it was when the renovations were done. There's actually a huge book there in the library on the renovations, running like nearly to about 1,000 pages.
Amazing. He's still a hero in the Doldergrand, if not in the rest of football.
He was a hero for a lot of reporters looking for copy as well, I guess, over the years.
Fascinatingly, in the Dolder Library is a book on the history of FIFA from a quarter of a century ago almost. Something that we'll need to go through, I think, another day. Many fascinating insights in it, a snapshot in time. Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked. As ever, if you hit subscribe for free, we land in your feeds automatically. As ever, thank you for listening to Martyn Ziegler from The Times, Tariq Panja for The New York Times, myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. So the Euros.
Yeah, you've been there just about from the start, I think, Rob, have you? And coming to its climax, and there's been some sort of big stories this week.
Yes, particularly from the England camp, taking a stand against the racist abuse Jess Carter, the defender, had been facing throughout the tournament, and Carter herself deciding to leave social media, and the FA really taking on the social media firms.
Just making people aware that, it's not okay and racism is still going on, and we're just here to do our job to the best of our ability. And if just by speaking up today makes one silly person keep their mouths shut with certain comments, then that's a big enough difference for me.
I have seen some examples of some pretty horrible stuff that has been sent to her. The social media platforms, because the law has now changed, they are liable potentially, so pretty heavy fines. We're talking about like £18 million or a big percentage of their profits under the new law that came into force in March.
This is the UK law, the Online Safety Act, that's come into effect. So the communications regulator, Ofcom, can intervene.
How does this work? Can I ask you both? And have they intervened at all, despite this new legislation? This is one case you're talking about. Is there any precedent of them using these new powers? Because I can't think of a major case where they actually have. And if they haven't, why do we think they haven't?
No, I'm pretty sure that they haven't. Ofcom, as far as we're aware, they certainly haven't publicised anything. So that's why I think this is seen as a big test. I'm pretty sure that no other case has been dealt with, or if Ofcom has investigated anything, they've certainly not announced anything. This was brought in, as we said, in March. So this is being seen by people as a very important test case.
What we're hearing from Ofcom is, while they do regulate broadcasters in the UK and then they can assess individual complaints about accounts or content on social media, first of all, have to be made to the sites themselves. And then Ofcom's role is to make sure they're actually implementing appropriate systems and processes to remove hate online. And there is pressure on them to start to find these social media companies. I've done a few interviews this week. Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary, said they should be enforcing those fines on the social media firms. Sanjay Bandari, who's the chair of Kick It Out, told me that not only have things not got better, they've got worse in terms of X and Instagram particularly. We've seen rollbacks of protections on those platforms. And in the past, we used to get quite generic comments from Twitter in its former guise and Meta as the owners of Instagram. Then we wouldn't hear from them for some time. Now we're just hearing nothing at all. I mean, they've not responded. And when I put this to Mark Bullingham, the FA's chief executive, he said they hadn't heard from them either. And he said that these firms had avoided responsibility. I mean, it seems incredible when an England international footballer talks about having to leave social media because of the racist abuse that she's faced, and it's a global story, that the firms themselves don't want to even comment or don't feel the need to. That wasn't until Friday, a day after I interviewed Mark Bullingham, and Meta did finally send a comment. But their response started by discussing, first of all, what Mark Bullingham has said, rather than the racist abuse suffered by Jess Carter. They wanted to insist they were taking firm action. They issued a statement within this that then did say no one should be subjected to racist abuse and we remove the content when we find it. But then they said, we're surprised to read the comments from Mark Bullingham to me, since they say we have been working directly with the FA and UEFA both before and during this tournament. Their statement went on about proactively removing violating comments, but then they said no one thing will stop racist behaviour overnight. They say they'll continue working to protect their community from abuse and will cooperate with police investigations. Something the entire email did not mention is Jess Carter by name. No message at all to the player who'd taken such a strong stand by going public and revealing she was having to step away from social media. So I'm still waiting to hear back from Meta in terms of follow-ups.
I reckon this is legal advice, isn't it? Because the things have changed, the legislation has changed, so anything you say which might seem to be in any way admitting any responsibility by these platforms, I guess that the lawyers will say, oh, don't say that, don't say that. I mean, that's how it often works in these kind of situations.
Is it not? It's not a case also of, but this is a case. We've been doing this podcast. It's called Sport Unlocked. So since the lockdown, which is now several years ago, we've been talking about these cases when they flare up, and they are obviously, for the person involved and people involved, really awful. But it's the same cycle over and over again. The point is, these social media companies, I don't understand what the kind of hardship is to start using this legislation. Often they are paying next to no tax to the British taxpayer. They're bringing no real value in terms of generating, like I said, tax revenue for the economy. They can be legislated against. It's incredible for me that they aren't. And that's something that probably the regulator might have to answer for, or the government at some point soon.
One of the issues is the fact on Instagram it can be direct messages. What do? Do you put filters in place? Do you block direct messages? Do you use AI to find algorithms, particular words? On X, it's very public. I mean, so much content is racist from even named accounts now on particularly political matters of the day.
Yeah, okay, sure. So it's that kind of complex, maybe. But I just want to say that in the last year, Meta, the company that owns Instagram now, had a revenue of $88.7 billion. Okay, surely a business that large, and it's taking us to things like metaverses and God knows what else Mark Zuckerberg wants to do. To be able to moderate content shouldn't be that hard. But since Trump has come into power, Meta has decided it doesn't really want to do moderation anymore. So, hey, Ofcom, over to you.
And it's rolled back diversity measures. Adam Moshiri is the head of Instagram. So we asked him for comment. Do you know what he's been posting on the platform yesterday while this big concern is being raised from footballers at one of the most high-profile sports events of the year about racism? Do you know what he's been posting about?
Go on.
Tell us. Go on.
What was the Instagram team busy doing yesterday? A plank contest with the design team. So they're all sort of lying on the ground static.
Oh, you mean like an exercise event, see who's got the best abs?
Some form of that, yeah. To create social content.
Great use of his time. And guys, just want to say, we mustn't do that here.
That's their priority. What about X? Now, I think many of us have thought, given the cuts from Elon Musk and removing offices from around the world, that they might not have had much of a UK operation, but they do. Jonathan Lewis is X's UK managing director, and he's been busy in the last week as well. So a couple of days before this announcement by Jess Carter about the race abuse she faced, Burnley said they'd announced a partnership with X, and it was about trying to deliver world-class fan engagement, content, and brand amplification. What their statement made no mention of was social media abuse. And yet, this is the same Burnley that, if you just go back a couple of years, was saying a culture of impunity has developed on social media. The government and the social media companies have the power to create meaningful consequences. We are calling on them to do so. Well, now they've got a partnership with X. They've not told me if they are actually using that power.
No, it's. I mean, it's good to like shine a light on these platforms, and I actually think Ofcom as well needs to be a bit more upfront about what it's doing now it's got these new powers.
And it's not just the England team as well. France said that their players had also been the victims of hateful abuse online as well, following their defeat to Germany in the quarterfinals here at the Euros.
There was barrage of abuse directed towards the French players when they were eliminated by Germany in the quarterfinals. In the aftermath of that, obviously France has Arab and black players in the team. I think Batcha, the left back, she came in for particular abuse online, and it was of a racial nature. She's, I think, of a Maghreb background as well. It just on and on, though, isn't it, guys? We'll come back. Premier League starts in a few weeks, and guess what? You know, we'll be talking about this. We'll be talking about Ofcom doing nothing. It just makes your head hurt sometimes. But with the England women, Rob, there was another development as well that coincided with this or came along as a result of this. Is that right?
Yes, this was them deciding to no longer taking a knee, thinking it had lost impact in terms of the messaging. So they stood for the semi-final against Italy before the match.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting one there. I mean, you can look at it both ways. That they wanted to do something different, perhaps. But Piara Power, the executive director of FAIR, which is the anti-discrimination and human rights body for international football, I think he was pretty disappointed about this when I spoke to him about it. He was like questioning who actually took this decision. There are not that many black players in the England squad, so who actually took this decision? And it seemed like doing they've managed to sort of persuade all their opponents up to the semi-final to join them in taking the knee, and now they're not doing it. It did also a lot of people, for political reasons who've opposed taking the knee, were sort of cheering this as a great sort of as a great step by the England women's team, because there's been controversy about the sort of links with the Black Lives Matter movement in the past. So I thought it was a strange decision, put it that way.
Well, yeah, particularly because they haven't come up with anything else, right? They're just not doing that.
Well, we can now bring in Piara Power from FAIR, who you mentioned just a moment ago, because he has sent us this voice note.
It's a shame, I think, that after so long of showing leadership on this issue, the Lionesses have decided to no longer do it. I've just come back from the US and was asked by a lot of people why they would drop this gesture now when one of their teammates has been abused. It seemed to a lot of people a bit of a contradiction. But whatever replaces it, we need for it to be significant. It needs to be a doubling down. It needs to be clear in terms of the message that's being sent out. I think we've all seen how, because of the leadership the Lionesses have given, that other teams often join them in taking the knee before matches. And that there's no question that that's a very public symbol of the call for equality, and particularly racial equality. I've seen some polling today which suggests that most football fans agree with the taking of the knee, and ethnic minorities amongst that agree very significantly. I think 75 to 80% of ethnic minorities agree that it's something to be done. Football fans generally also then seem to suggest that they don't think it's needed, but ethnic minorities disagree. They seem to think that it's still needed. So we have a little bit of a split there, and those that are liable to be victims of hate speech are often the ones that are most advocate of gestures like this, and we don't see them as performative. We don't see them as inconsequential, even if they can't in effect address the biggest issues that we have. They are significant, and I hope, as I say, that there's more that comes down the line that is significant.
Rob, you're in Switzerland. In the aftermath of that, have there been any details as to how that decision was reached? Who talked to whom? As Martyn said, there aren't many black players in the team at all when it comes to England. So how was that decision reached?
Well, they were thinking it wasn't making an impact. It didn't quite resonate in terms of the wider message they hoped for. But I think I've said this on the pod before as we've been discussing taking a knee over the years, which is when it was happening, say, before Premier League matches, it was almost glossed over, particularly maybe by some commentators. So it probably lacked a sort of focal point messaging around why the knee was being taken each time. Almost you need to highlight, I would think, a cause each time or a particular strand, and it could be a lack of diversity in particular strands of football or particular issues in the game, particularly issues with social media platforms, perhaps something to focus fans and people watching to think about why it's being done in that particular moment rather than a sort of just generic messaging.
The reason I asked, though, is this particular team has been quite vocal on social issues. In general, women's football is, in a sense, has been much more progressive on these issues than men's football. So if they aren't taking a knee, if that's the stand, what are they going to do? Because this is a group and a sport that does take on these issues, and we've praised them for doing this over the years. So if they're saying that doesn't work, are they just not going to do anything about racism, or are we anticipating something to come? And I think that's for them to decide, because the issue is there, as obviously Jess Carter has found out.
Yeah, something asked about on the press conference about this, in the sense it's often the victims are the ones who have to lead the fight back and to take on those who are abusing them. So there was the collective team statement, and that obviously had great impact. The fact we're talking about it now, still obviously several days on. But I did say to Mark Bullingham in the interview that us as a media can quickly move on from instances, whereas he then said, yes, we are working behind the scenes. I think, as we highlighted recently on the pod, how the race abuse that Antonio Rudiger reported at the Club World Cup has barely been mentioned since.
No, it's definitely right, and I think you're right about when the Premier League did the taking the knee for every match. It came to a sort of natural end, and now they just do it for specific, maybe like twice a season, and it probably is much more impactful that way. So I just thought it was strange that you'd stop doing it. But if you're going to do something else, then fair enough. But whatever, turn your back or refuse to sing or whatever, or anything. Just something to show as a collective squad you'll discuss what's happening. But I don't know. It's maybe there is nothing obvious.
I suppose it has got us talking about it by not taking a knee.
Yeah, this week. But so then what?
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, at the Men's World Cup in 2022, the Germany team got criticised for putting their fingers over their hands, a shush symbol, to do something more symbolic in terms of their sort of wider stand. That was more about rights in Qatar, wasn't it?
Yeah. I suppose the main thing of that, the reason why people at PR are probably were disappointed by it is the fact that lots of commentators were saying, "Oh, great news! England women are not taking the knee anymore." Not. This is disgraceful that they've been forced into doing it because they racially abused.
So we are building up to the Women's Euros final, a rematch of the World Cup final from 2023. I went to speak to some of the Spain fans to see how they were reflecting on whether there'd been a culture shift in Spain in any way in the fallout from Luis Rubiales and the sexual assault conviction for the enforced kiss on Jenny Hermoso on the podium in Sydney. I think many feeling really things haven't changed. There wasn't a mass Spanish fan base. Yes, the federation had put up a stand in the centre of Zurich ahead of their semi-final against Germany, so they led a fan march, but certainly not supported in the same numbers even as a country like Wales, which hadn't qualified for a women's tournament before. And obviously a lot of focus on who's at this tournament as well, how much attention is being paid to it, who is here, who isn't here.
Yeah, funny enough, it's a neat segue actually, Rob. You might not know this because I'm going to drop it on you here. An article has just dropped in Mundo Deportivo which is a Barcelona-based newspaper. And in Spain, you have the Real Madrid newspapers and you have the Barcelona newspapers. This article is an interview with Joan Laporta, the Barcelona president. Speaking of who isn't here at the Euros, we mentioned the UEFA president, Alexander Ceferin, who has been kind of MIA throughout what's been an extremely successful Women's Euros. I think they announced record attendances of any Women's Euro tournament during the England semi-final. So congratulations to the host there, Switzerland. Anyway, he's not been there. But in this interview with Mundo Deportivo, Joan Laporta basically has said, and we've always been told that when it comes to financial fair play issues, this is an independent commission and it's kept away from the president of UEFA. Whenever we've asked him, he said, look, I don't even go anywhere near this because it's independent. And all of us have, over the years, asked about various cases. Here, the kind of curtain's been lifted a bit. The question from the journalist is, Barcelona, you had these huge losses and somehow UEFA only fined you 15 million euros and it could have been 60 million. What happened? And it basically, Laporta has said on the record in this interview, he's had a bunch of conversations with Alexander Ceferin, the UEFA president, and he understands that Barcelona is a special club and it's a bit different, and he's helped them navigate these FFP problems. Like, there it is on the record. And I just think that's kind of, you kind of suspect that this might happen, but there, to see it in black and white, I must say it's kind of incredible, because we've talked about Barcelona's losses and they've been enormous. We've talked about various cases. We talk about Crystal Palace in a separate thing, which isn't FFP, and how it's an independent process. But here is the president of arguably one of the 2-3 biggest clubs in the world saying, well, the UEFA presidents helped us get through this process. I don't know what to think about that.
Is this different from settlements that are reached?
Well, it's no, because the settlements are also with the independent panel. It's nothing to do with, and there you get the issue, and this is this perennial issue, and it's a really important one, about tournament organizer and governing body. You want Barcelona in the Champions League, and this comes in the back of Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Juventus leading that Super League group. Barcelona clearly back in the fold because he's called Ceferin, here a great leader and a great guy. Of course he would. He understood our arguments to mitigate and reduce the sanction, Laporta says. Really, it shouldn't be Shefferin's decision at all, any of this stuff. And the Super League stuff is really interesting because they ask about that as well. They say, and where is the Super League? Laporta says UEFA and Barcelona are now much closer. And you think, of course they are, because he's sorted you out here. Alexander Ceferin appointed some people from UEFA to talk to representatives of the Super League, Laporta has said. I think it's good news and goodwill on both sides. And this gets to the heart of it. And this is the political tension and how any of these leaders have to be pragmatic. You don't want a Super League, so I'm going to have to sort out certain teams, which is what Laporta said, Barcelona. This is where the governance model really does break down. And it's in a way, I'm so pleased that he's been so candid here, because we can see it now, that this is how stuff works.
Yeah, so it is meant to be the independent club financial control board, which takes all the decisions, makes all the settlements with the clubs. I think there's been stuff from the football leaks in the past. Did it not suggest that when Infantino was at UEFA, he organised the deal with PSG
with Man City and PSG, and
Man City.
Traverso also.
Yeah.
But Infantino wasn't the president as well. I see what you're saying.
No. But so I'm just saying that it's not the first time that it seems like the CFCB has been sort of bypassed or whatever.
No, if you're a small club or Palace or any of these people, you'd be wondering, how do we get a special relationship, I guess?
And this brings us to the ongoing Crystal Palace complaints over why they've been excluded from the Europa League over multi-club ownership issues. We have now seen Woody Johnson buy the stake from John Textor in the South London club. Palace are appealing to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Kaveh Solokol from Sky Sports posted on X, looks like Crystal Palace's way of dealing with potential ownership conflicts of interest is more effective than UEFA's solution. Palace, shareholder sells up and leaves. UEFA, legal loopholes to allow clubs with same owners to play in the same competitions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's going to be really intriguing to see if the Court of Arbitration for Sport takes this line that, if it's not done on March the 1st, then you can't join the competition, because if you do put your house in order before the season starts, you can say that perhaps there is a legitimate reason why that club should take place. So, I mean, do you think it looks like it's going to be one for the lawyers to wrestle with?
Yeah, I agree. One for the lawyers to wrestle with, but also, I guess, does the punishment fit the crime as well, in a way, in terms of what the outcome has been here? And just to go back on Barcelona, the incredible week they've had. This is a huge club. So they were supposed to go on a tour of Japan and South Korea. The day before they were supposed to leave for the Japan leg of this to play a friendly against Vissel Kobe. The team put a statement out. I haven't seen anything like this. Barcelona announces that it's been obliged to suspend its participation in the game scheduled for next Sunday in Japan due to contractual breaches on behalf of the promoter. This basically, they didn't get paid to go. And part of the reason is this tour was organised in a way that not normally done. Albert Luque, I think he played for Newcastle, former Spanish international striker. He was kicked out with Rubiales, the Spanish Football Federation. He had a random Korean contact who said, right, I'll sort you out. Someone who's never organised a tour of this nature. And guess what? The money hasn't come. And Barcelona, in its business activities, they've been brilliant, as we've seen watching them play. They won the league and they had Lamine Yamal storming into the semi-finals there in the Champions League. But out of the, off the pitch, the various scandals and strange shenanigans going on there, whether it's these selling their own rights, so-called levers, asset sales, etc. And then this commercial stuff. This trip to Japan isn't the only strange thing. They've apparently signed a deal with the Democratic Republic of Congo, which the Foreign Office says, in the UK is not a place you should travel to for a tourism contract. 40 million. There's an ongoing situation there. They've announced a friendly in Benghazi in Libya, where a government that the EU doesn't recognise is in charge. And they've opened a shop, the first ever Barcelona shop outside of Spain in Tbilisi, Georgia, of all places, which just happens to be where Juan Laporta's chief of staff is from. I mean, it's just so strange when you think of this massive club and then all of this kind of weird behaviour of it.
I mean, it's almost like something from a spoof Private Eye article or something like that. I mean, playing a friendly in Benghazi, and the tourist board of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yeah.
Any official fan trips there?
Well, guys, there might be a good company with the Benghazi, because there was a stadium. I was Googling. There was a stadium that was opened there by the regime, which is run by a guy called General Haftar. A new stadium was built, and one Michael Owen was there for the inauguration of that stadium a few months ago. So, where Michael Owen has trodden first, Barcelona follow, it seems.
Figo and Etta were also there in Benghazi. And Roberto Carlos.
Legends.
You pointed out on Blue Sky, staying away from X, that some media had already left and gone on this tour.
I had, because someone called me. That's how I caught wind of this crazy situation. I'd seen the statement to provide some of the details of this. And what made it worse was it was so last minute that the journalists, or some of them who would normally cover this, were in the air on the way to Japan to cover this match that will now not take place. it just seems so tin pot, really, doesn't it? So cheap how this has happened. This is famously, obviously, Barcelona that never used to have a sponsor on their shirts until quite late, because all that, whatever the brand, more than a club, and all this stuff is. I think all of that is kind of eroded. It's hard to think of Barcelona as just another club, aren't they? Trying to sell bits and pieces off to go and buy football players or whatever else they want to do with that cash.
Well, obviously, commercial objectives are something all clubs are focused on. It's just who you do those deals with and how you do them.
Yeah, but you also lose that sanctimony, if you want, that they claim to be something different, and well, they're not, are they?
Yeah, I think you'd be very, very surprised if a top Premier League club suddenly cancelled their pre-season tour at the last minute because the money hadn't surfaced and that things hadn't been done professionally beforehand.
Well, think about the prep as well. So there's the commercial side, but these are fine-tuned athletes. These trips, take months to plan. Particularly how we're going to keep the players in peak condition. They're moving from time zones, the flight, how we're going to get them doing these commercial activities, but ready to start the season in peak fitness. And this kind of thing obviously doesn't help, does it?
No, and probably when the next player workload complaints, we'll be hearing from FIFA pointing out about this.
Yeah.
We have been hearing from UEFA actually this week.
Mm-hmm.
They did issue a statement about Alexander Sheffrin in the Euros. They said from the outset it was planned that the UEFA president would attend only the opening and final matches of the UEFA Women's Euro, reflecting these matches' ceremonial and strategic importance. Although he was involved behind the scenes during the tournament, his schedule, which included a brief holiday, allowed for a focused presence at key moments rather than throughout the entire competition. So they put that statement out. I think there've been some images on social media.
Well, that's good. What do you mean? What like of holidays and things like that?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's nice of them to clear that up. But then you do wonder this is why women, like people who follow women's sport or women's football, be wondering, well, okay, but then why did you go to a lot of the men's Euros? It was only a year ago. It was crisscrossing Germany on those private jets between short flights to these games. So it's that. And I suppose if you want to be a leader and you are leading the organisation, and this is one of your leading events, maybe take your holidays afterwards. No one's saying maybe don't take a holiday, but I don't know.
Luka Modric and Novak Djokovic amongst those on holiday with him.
Oh, that's great company. Did they play any five-a-side paddle? What was the scene?
Probably paddle. Another plug for the my newfound sport.
Yeah, exactly.
One to return to actually later on, and Qatar's links to that because news about Qatar and sport. But we have seen others from UEFA at these matches. Martyn Callan, who was next to Prince William, he's been at other games as well. Giorgio Marchetti and Thea Theodoridis as well, the General Secretary.
Well, Martyn Callan, if he wasn't there, that would be absolutely insane because he's in charge of organising these events.
Yeah,
I'm not going to praise a man for going to work. I mean, he's supposed to be there.
Yeah. And prize money has gone up, and we've got some more details about how teams should be spending it, how they should be distributing it to their players.
Yeah, so basically, UEFA have issued guidance on this, so that if teams get to the knockout phase, they say that they will hand over money to national associations, prize money. It's if you get to the final, basically it's about €5 million, and they're saying 40% of that should go directly to the players. So that would work out for England and Spain around about. Together with a match for, I think it's about £75,000, 87,000 euros, and then you get a match fee on top of that,
which can be annual salary still for many players with their clubs.
I think it will be certainly for some of those it will be equivalent to their annual salary for many of the Women's Super League players for sure. I think 3 years ago there was a survey said the annual salary was £47,000. But I mean, things have moved on quite quickly since 2022. So I guess it's probably be around the average salary. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was around about £80,000.
For the and that's the Women's Super League in England. But obviously,
Yes.
for these other players from Sweden and wherever the other countries, Italy, etc. I wonder if those salaries are, as you said, the Super League has benefited from Sky TV deal, BBC TV deal, Barclays sponsorship, etc. But in those leagues, it must be a considerable amount more than what they're getting for their club jobs.
Interesting how there are no Italian players at these Euros playing in the WSL. It was something notable when they played in the semi-final, and whether that's about a reflection of more investment in Italy. Now they no longer have the law that prohibited players earning more than €30,000 a year when they were still classed as amateurs up until 2022, or it's just about the choices of clubs that they're deciding to stay in Italy.
Yeah, and obviously it'll be interesting to see what happens now, because wow, some of those performances from Italy, including in that semi-final against England, were top notch. You didn't see that much difference qualitatively on the playing field, certainly when it came to the national team.
In the last week, we have seen Olivia Smith become the first £1 million female footballer with her move from Liverpool to Arsenal. But those numbers very much eclipsed by those in the men's game. New data from over the summer transfer window showing that financial strength of Premier League clubs.
Yeah. I mean, this is, for some people, won't be surprising, but it's worth repeating. So, we haven't reached August. Season's still 2-3 weeks away. Premier League clubs have spent over €1.6 billion. I think it's a lot more since actually this. That's already more than France. Financial crisis, of course, in France, French football, but Italy, Spain, Germany. The other so-called big leagues in Europe. The Premier League has smashed past all of them put together, and it made me think, like, what? Obviously, the Premier League's TV income is about £3.6 billion a season if you include overseas and domestic rights. That's more than £1.5 billion more than the next best one, which I think is Spain. So you're thinking, why does this happen? This is going to be the trend. Maybe the Premier League will spend first, buying the best players from all of these teams, as well as spending within the Premier League, and that is what fuels the other teams to then start buying later. Maybe they need that Premier League cash to fall into their own bank accounts in order for them to get active in the transfer market.
Yeah, I think it's the cycle now. There's a new TV deal starts for the Premier League this season. There's been another big jump in overseas TV income. So yes, I think that's the model. They buy first, and then the transfer income that the other European and South American, whatever clubs they will use that to fund their own activity, which is inevitably going to be a bit less than the Premier League. And I think this feeds into the whole sort of feeling in some parts of European football that the Premier League is too dominant financially. There's no signs of this changing.
Although, of course, clubs elsewhere do benefit if the money flows down from the Premier League into other leagues across Europe, and those clubs gain their windfall.
Yes, yeah, that's right. But then that's after the Premier League has hoovered up arguably the best talent. So you've got that situation there. But also, I was talking to people in the industry. There are two prices. So a Portuguese team is selling a player, and the Portuguese are a great example. Benfica, Sporting Porto, and others selling market. They have a Premier League price, and then if they can't sell their players to the Premier League, that price then drops from whoever, midfielder, striker, whoever it is. That quantum, the Premier League price, goes to European price. And that's also another factor. So the Premier League teams are paying a premium by dint of the fact they are loaded. And it's a very funny marketplace where, who you're selling to dictates the price tag. It's like, I don't know, if you're going to IKEA, which is, I guess, a European furniture destination, the Malm or whatever table is is the same price everywhere. But when it comes to footballers, it moves depending on the market.
Well, I can tell you pay a lot more for certain things in Zurich than you might do in other parts of Europe.
There you go. The most expensive Rostis.
Yeah, it's probably helped with FIFA not doing much here for the last decade.
I think there's also probably a disparity within the Premier League. I mean, if you're Manchester United, you have to pay another premium on top of that because the selling club thinks you're desperate, so they'll probably add more to that because of how much. But I mean, look at how much Liverpool has spent. It's been amazing. It's something like £270 million so far. There's some people have been querying, I've seen on social media, how they can do this and still pass a profit and sustainability rules, but it's not just what you do in one summer. I think to fail PSR, you have to have that of a club who's in the Champions League. You have to spend like that amount of money on transfers every year and make significant losses and don't sell your women's team to yourself. Then you might be in trouble.
Hotel.
The joke is still the fact it's the Philip Coutinho credit card, the fact they got £146 million from Barcelona in 2018 for Coutinho. That was probably seen as questionable at the time, a sort of sign of a lack of ambition, but was a pretty savvy financial deal in the end.
Yes, that was the last big rebuild. That allowed them to buy Alisson and Virgil van Dijk, for example, pillars of the team. But those numbers, this is in light of the Chelsea spending spree under Bowley. I wonder if there's a change. I feel like the quantums are huge numbers now, aren't we? Hundreds rather than tens of millions of pounds. So not hundreds, but over £100 million now seems what Premier League clubs are willing and able to spend on top players. It's mad when you think about it. Crazy sums.
And one to watch in terms of where the power is in the Premier League. Do Newcastle keep on hold to Alexander Isak? Can the Saudi wealth, can they actually ultimately resist an offer from Liverpool if the player wants to go? And that will tell us about something where Newcastle still are in that pecking order despite PAF being behind them.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, but it also raises the question about PSR. And there was a lot of people saying, oh, this is just a ruse by the big six or big five or big four, whatever, to solidify their position in the top. I think maybe if this is another sign of the unintended consequences maybe of PSR, where a team that's able to grow is unable to grow in some way.
The drawbridge has been pulled up. It's the cartel.
Yeah, all of that, all of this stuff, but it probably gives succor to people who are saying things like that.
There's also the interesting thing, if he does go to Saudi, Alexander Isak, you have the Saudi Public Investment Fund owned Newcastle United selling one of their players to the Saudi Public Investment Fund owned quartet of very rich clubs in Saudi Arabia, which has its own issues.
It'll be also interesting. Exactly. I mean, the levels here of why you maybe shouldn't have state investment in the Premier League, writ large there. But the question then is, this player, if it's a question of ambition and wanting to play in the Champions League, etc., why he would be off to Saudi Arabia? And there is a world then, Ziegs, perhaps. Now, if we're going to play this game. And it'll be Al Hilal or whoever, Public Investment Fund, Etihad, whoever, they buy Alexander Isak from Newcastle, pay him the $500,000 a week or whatever he wants, and then loan him straight back to Newcastle. Is there a world where that happens?
There's a world, and it exists.
Well, has Saudi Arabia this week been outflanked in another part of the sporting world? Because unexpectedly, Qatar announced it is in talks with the IOC to stage the 2036 Olympics and Paralympics. We thought maybe a Saudi bid might be coming. Maybe they still will announce it. The Qatari announcement was actually followed by the Indian Olympic officials holding their own news conference in New Delhi, talking about their bid that they're planning for the 2036 Olympics. And we seem to somehow have an Olympic bidding process underway, whereas the last we heard from Kirsty Coventry at the IOC at the start of her presidency just weeks ago was the fact everything's on pause.
Yeah, I think this is actually reflects her new position, actually, and the fact that she is looking at how the bidding processes are, because it had sort of, under Thomas Bach, been seen as a bit of a procession, isn't it, for India to host 2036. The Ambani family, obviously, one of very involved in that, the hugely wealthy family there. But I think this Qatar announcement shows things are now not as firmly fixed in the direction of India. What do you think, Tariq?
Yeah, I think this bidding war, and I use the word war, it will feel like that. I think it's going to be. I think we'll have a lot to write about. Fair to say, if they both intend to go hammer and tongs at trying to get the Olympics. We've covered a Qatar bidding, a very contested Qatar bidding effort during the 2009-10 process for the 2022 World Cup. And my goodness, the repercussions of that still being felt around football. I remember being in the room when Qatar was booted out of a contest for what turned out to be the 2016 Olympic Games that was won by Rio de Janeiro. This was well early in the process, as said in 2008 in Athens at Sport Accord. And they held this presser. And I think there were only 3 journalists. I was one of 3 journalists there. So this was before Qatar was a thing, really, or a big player in sport. No one perhaps was taking them that seriously at that point. And they were kicked out because they tried to move the Olympics to October because it was going to be obviously too hot. And the IOC, I think Jack Rogge was the president at the time, said no chance. The IOC, the Olympics has these dates. Now, what I'd ask you guys, if Qatar is bidding, the strength of Qatar, the strength of the Middle East in sports, since that day in Athens in 2008 to where we are today, is so much more apparent. They are a real force wherever you look, whether it's Saudi, Qatar, UAE. Would the IOC, and should the IOC maybe, countenance moving the Olympic Games dates to a time when Middle East countries, wealthy Middle East countries like Qatar could host them? FIFA already has, obviously.
We've had slight shift of dates before, haven't we, with Sydney hosting in September of 2000.
Yeah, that was almost the reason, actually, that Qatar was basically knocked out by the IOC Executive Board when they were bidding for 2016 is because the IOC felt with this huge American TV deal with NBC that they couldn't allow that to happen again because the NBC were unhappy about Sydney doing that. Times changed, though, to an extent, but I still think that will create a big problem about moving the dates. And India, probably, would they want to have it in October as well? Probably. That's when they held the Commonwealth Games in New Delhi in 2010.
Which was a fiasco.
Not because of the weather.
Not because of the weather. My goodness, I just remember those pictures of those stray dog paw prints on the athletes' beds. I mean, obviously times have changed, but in terms of money, you see, NBC and all of this. The NBC TV contract still very, very, very important to the IOC, but not as much as it was back then. And also, we've seen when a sports organisation needs money to bump up its costs and to meet costs, etc., there are sometimes wealthy Middle Eastern nations who stump up or show up. Hello, FIFA. Club World Cup was great. Like, it does happen, right? The world's changed. Maybe they'll just say, right, we'll dip into our piggy bank, money box, and we'll just drop a few bill to mitigate some of those potential losses.
And do they end up doing a dual awarding, the no losers principle? Does that survive? Because when we had the battle between LA and Paris, well, they just got to split them. One had 24, one had 28. So do we get something that Qatar gets 36, India gets 40, or, but there is interest from Turkey, Indonesia as well. Do we get a joint Mideast bid? Do Qatar and Saudi have to combine in some way?
I think Rob, that's dropped another idea there, haven't you? You think a joint Olympics to go with your 24-hour Mr. Watanabe Olympics? So, yeah, all right, Rob. No, I actually think this is going to be contested, and the other reason is during the bidding for the IOC presidency, the members were saying we want to have a say on who gets the Olympics, not this process where it's all decided and put on a ribbon and given to Brisbane, for example. They want to return to having a voice and where the games go. So, and I think all of the candidates for the presidency suggested they're going to move away from that park idea of preferred bidder status.
Will keep us going with something to talk about. The IC contested election kept us going for months. You're still mentioning Mr. Watanabe now.
Great friend of the pod.
Excellent. The NBC deal has already been signed for the 2036 Summer Olympics, I should say. But it'd be interesting to see if that specifies dates. I presume it doesn't, but that'd be a good question to find out. And the other sort of interesting thing, because you did flag, Rob, that Saudi had sort of expressed a previous interest in themselves bidding for the Olympics. I mean, they're not going to be too happy if their 2034 World Cup gets slightly overshadowed by Qatar winning the Olympics, do you think?
Yeah, guys. So it might be one for people to write in. There's an email that Rob will I'm sure will tell you to
sportunlockpod@gmail.com.
All right. So if you can disagree with this, but the World Cup is bigger than the Olympics. I'm sorry to the Olympics public, but maybe that high elite level, the Olympics is the one everybody wants. But I think Saudi Arabia it'll be hard to overshadow a football FIFA Men's World Cup, won't it?
Particularly with 48 teams as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, overshadow was the wrong word, but sort of take some of the limelight away from.
Yeah.
One thing that won't be an issue is securing government. Sorry. One thing that won't be an issue is securing government financial backing, although it's taken until now for London organisers to get some government support for the athletics worlds in 2029.
Yeah, I don't know why they delayed on that, but finally the government have agreed that they will underwrite the World Championships, and it's going to be a financial success because people come to the World Athletics Championships in London and pay for the tickets, and it's always a success. And it really, the last time I did it in 2017 made a profit, so it was a sort of no-brainer for me.
What is the underwriting? What are they underwriting for people who aren't familiar with this stuff?
Well, they're basically providing financial guarantees in case it makes a loss.
Just that. It's not like commitment to do infrastructure work or anything like this.
Well, they're security, obviously. They have to get security guarantees, and there'll be some sort of transport guarantees from the Mayor of London. But yeah, I mean it's fairly small scale compared to Euros, World Cups, Olympics.
Yeah, all contained around the Olympic Stadium, well, still the London Stadium without its sponsorship. So we're looking at events 4 years down the line and 11 years ahead.
I mean, who knows what's going on like next week? 4 years and 11 years, my goodness. Yeah, I mean, wow, Rob, what will you be doing?
Maybe everyone's
still in Switzerland.
Just leave you with this last thing to think about, guys. We are now closer to 2050 than we were to the year 2000.
Oh, my goodness.
Something for everyone to contemplate. As you think about what to say in your reviews to us on whichever pod platform you're listening to us on, it helps to spread the word. Send us your feedback as well and anything. sportunlockpod@gmail.com. We are on all the social platforms. Better to be there or not. Get the word out there about the concerns about them on there. That's something up for debate as well.
Yeah, maybe write into Ofcom if you have any issues with those platforms.
Yeah. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.